In the dead silence beyond Neptune, past the orbit of Pluto where sunlight is no more than a whisper, a fragile metal messenger continues its journey through the void. It's Voyager 2, our emissary, our explorer, our silent companion wandering farther than any human object ever has. Launched in 1977, it was never meant to last this long, and yet it does, enduring the unimaginable cold, the radiation, the darkness. 47 years adrift, still ticking, still transmitting, still whispering home. But then, something changed. Something so strange, so unexpected, that when it reached Earth, it didn't just baffle the engineers. It stopped the world. For decades, Voyager 2 has been our eyes in the abyss. It flew past Jupiter and Saturn, skimmed Uranus and Neptune, revealing things no one had imagined. Magnetic fields twisted like ropes, geysers erupting from icy moons, rings so thin and delicate they look like whispers of dust. It kept going, out into interstellar space, beyond the heliopause, the bubble where our sun's influence ends. And even then, it didn't fall silent. It kept sending back data, slow, steady, ordinary. Plasma readings, cosmic rays, magnetic fields, a heartbeat in the void. Then one day, that heartbeat shifted. At first, the transmission looked like garbled noise, static wrapped around fragments of data. To NASA's Deep Space Network, it was just a glitch, maybe a tired old system misfiring after nearly half a century. But as the engineers dove into the raw signal, a chill set in. This wasn't ordinary. The problem wasn't with the antenna or the spacecraft's aging memory. Something deeper had happened. One of Voyager's systems, its attitude articulation and control system, the part that keeps it aimed precisely at Earth, had suddenly begun routing its data through an onboard computer that hadn't been used in decades. A subsystem no longer supported. A ghost pathway. No one told it to. No command was sent. It just did. Yet Voyager 2 was still pointing at Earth, as if nothing had gone wrong. The signal was strong. No indication of system failure. Just this eerie, deliberate shift. It was as if the spacecraft had made a decision, not by human hand, not by programming error, but by some influence we couldn't see or understand. And the further they dug, the stranger it got. Inside the corrupted telemetry were patterns, not random noise, patterns. Engineers began to see structure, sequences echoing the protocols used during Voyager's launch in 1977, like the spacecraft was reaching into its own memory, pulling out instructions it hadn't used in decades. Embedded in those signals was a pulse, repeating every 7.44 seconds, a low, rhythmic hum riding beneath the data. It faded in and out like breathing, and it refused to stop. No command could override it. No reset could erase it. They started calling it the heartbeat. At first, the explanations were technical. Maybe feedback from deep space interference, a cosmic ray strike, a cold reboot. But that didn't hold. The pulse wasn't from inside Voyager. It was coming from somewhere else. That's when the conversation shifted, from engineering problem to existential puzzle. What if Voyager 2 hadn't glitched? What if it had crossed into something? Eventually, NASA released a vague statement. Telemetry glitch, problem resolved. Everything's back to normal. But internally, the story was different. When they finally decoded the corrupted signal using Voyager's original legacy software, something few systems even support anymore, they discovered markers, binary segments, structured data that no one had sent, data that shouldn't have existed. And when those fragments were mapped visually, the hair on the backs of necks stood up. Hexagons, nested inside one another, patterns so precise they looked like machine code, but alive with geometry found in snowflakes, in beehives, in Saturn's own mysterious hexagonal storm. Recursive shapes, echoing fractals, not noise, not error, intent. And then came the most disorienting detail of all. The timestamps on those data packets didn't match Voyager's current clock. They were offset, as if arriving not just from another place, but from another time. The past, the future, or something stranger, something outside our entire concept of linear time. Behind closed doors, voices grew uneasy. Someone whispered, "This isn't data. This is a message." That's when the atmosphere at NASA changed. Analysts were reassigned. Access to raw transmissions was restricted. Public updates slowed. Independent researchers, those studying the waveform anomalies, were contacted, advised to stop publishing. Some called it National Security Protocol. Others called it a cover-up. And then, the name leaked. Event Phi 2’s. Whatever this was, it wasn't being treated as an equipment malfunction anymore. It had become a classified anomaly, a protected secret. And in the silence that followed, the question began to form like fog across a dark ocean. What had Voyager 2 touched out there? Some think it's natural, a field of electromagnetic turbulence, a relic of galactic weather. But others believe the probe encountered something designed, a system not built by us, but by something or someone that listens. Voyager didn't just send a signal, it sent a knock. And now it seems something knocked back. In the weeks that followed the public's brief glimpse into Voyager 2's anomaly, the silence that settled was more unsettling than the noise. NASA's official channels grew quiet. The once steady trickle of telemetry updates turned into a void. The data, once proudly shared with the world, became the property of internal review boards and confidential working groups. What had always been a celebration of human achievement, the triumph of a spacecraft launched in the disco era, still breathing life into our cosmic understanding, was suddenly behind locked doors, and those watching closely began to sense it. Something had changed. Behind the scenes, within private university departments and small independent research labs, a quiet resistance began. Not all scientists were content to be cut off from the information they had helped interpret. Some had saved fragments of the corrupted data before restrictions came down. Others worked from memory, reconstructing what they had seen. Those haunting binary echoes, the geometries that pulsed like signals but spoke like language. They worked in secret, sharing findings on encrypted forms and closed networks, trying to piece together what NASA was no longer talking about. What they began to uncover was even more disturbing than they had expected. Several patterns embedded in the Voyager 2 signal began to match known anomalies recorded across decades, anomalies that had never been explained, never fully understood. One of the most chilling comparisons was with the infamous WOW signal from 1977, captured by a radio telescope in Ohio. That signal had lasted just 72 seconds, never repeated, never traced. But here in Voyager's corrupted transmission were time-encoded fragments that mirrored its spectral shape and timing cadence. Not an exact replica, something deeper, a cousin, a relative, a recurrence. And it didn't end there. Fast radio bursts, those incredibly short, high-energy signals that had baffled astronomers since 2007, suddenly took on new meaning. The waveform comparisons weren't perfect, but a kind of rhythm emerged. The same odd spacing between harmonics, the same decay patterns. What if, they asked, what if all these signals hadn't been isolated events? What if they had been echoes, reflections of the same unknown structure that Voyager 2 had now wandered into? It was in this underground circle that the term event field started to take shape, an unofficial name for the phenomenon that now surrounded Voyager 2. It wasn't just a patch of space, they argued. It was an active region, a system, a structure. Not solid like a spaceship and not exactly alive, but something responsive. It acted with intention, or at least with awareness. And somehow Voyager had triggered it. They proposed something radical, so radical it bordered on heresy in the world of traditional astrophysics. What if the event field was older than stars? What if it wasn't made of matter in any conventional sense, but of information, encoded space-time, folded in on itself, existing as a kind of cosmic nervous system that only responds when something touches it the right way? Voyager, with its ancient binary software, its simple, unencrypted transmissions, its slow analog signals, might have done exactly that. Not by broadcasting a message, but by being a message, a relic of our innocence, a bottle adrift in an ocean so vast we never expected a reply. And yet now, a ripple had returned. A pulse. A whisper. Within NASA, rumors swirled among lower-level engineers and support staff. They weren't given access to the core findings, but they heard things. Unexplained signals picked up by other deep space antennas, hours or even days after Voyager's heartbeat began. Minor fluctuations in background radiation levels from parts of the sky, long considered empty. Even one instance, where a short burst of radio distortion briefly interfered with satellite communications over the Pacific. A phenomenon that mirrored the spectral signature of Voyager 2's anomaly. Most wrote it off as coincidence. Space is unpredictable. Cosmic noise is, after all, cosmic. But the scientists in the know, the ones watching the patterns form, weren't so sure. It was the dormant computer that haunted them most. Voyager 2 had dozens of subsystems, many of which had long since been shut down to preserve power. Yet it wasn't one of the active ones that carried the hidden transmission. It was a legacy circuit, disconnected for decades. And yet it had spoken, not just once, but in a deliberate cadence, repeatedly, persistently, as if something had chosen it. That meant a level of interaction no natural magnetic fluctuation could explain. The moment that realization struck, the mood shifted from awe to fear. This wasn't just discovery anymore. It was encounter. Engineers began to question the safety of continuing contact. One memo, leaked but never verified, suggested Voyager 2's orientation was being subtly influenced, that its small course correction thrusters had fired twice without command. Not enough to redirect it, just enough to hint that it was being nudged, as if something was keeping it in place, holding it in the threshold. The idea of control sent a ripple of panic through the tightest circles. If something could manipulate a 48-year-old spacecraft tens of billions of kilometers from Earth, it meant that our understanding of distance, security, and isolation was flawed. Space was supposed to be the ultimate buffer. Now it looked more like a shared membrane. Something could touch us through our machines without crossing the stars. The team assigned to Voyager signals, now labeled Deep Protocol Group 7, was said to be operating on a near military clearance level. No more public updates, no more press releases, just silence and speculation. Meanwhile, Voyager 2 kept drifting, still sending back signals, still alive. And inside those signals, the heartbeat remained, every 7.44 seconds, never changing, never stopping. To those who believed, it felt like waiting, like something was listening, or worse, something was thinking. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, a decision loomed. Some wanted to send a return signal, a simple encoded binary, a pulse in reply, a gesture of acknowledgement. Others argued against it. The risk was too great. If something had answered us, then the best move might be to stay quiet, not provoke, not engage. The debate tore the team apart. Thousands of light years from Earth, drifting through a vast silence older than human memory, Voyager 2 kept transmitting. The signal, still pulsing, still repeating every 7.44 seconds, had not changed. And that perhaps was the most chilling part of all. It was not noise. It was not random. It was not the result of degradation or malfunction. It was steady, deliberate, too perfect to ignore, too alien to explain. The machine that had once been humanity's proud ambassador to the stars had become a relay for something else, something watching. Back on Earth, in a conference room deep beneath the surface of JPL, an emergency session had been called. Not a public meeting. This wasn't a press event. It was invitation only. Representatives from NASA, the NSA, the Department of Defense, and, most disturbingly, civilians from major tech conglomerates in 2 private quantum computing labs. They weren't here to celebrate Voyager's longevity. They were here to decide what to do about the message. The internal debate had reached a boiling point. One side argued that the pattern in the transmission was benign, possibly even an invitation, that it might be an encoded language or a handshake protocol, a form of contact designed for low-level machines like Voyager. The other side, hardened by recent developments, saw it differently. They pointed to the thruster anomalies. The unexplained brief radiation burst from the Kuiper belt. The mirrored signals that had begun echoing faintly across deep space network antennas aimed in completely different directions. And now something new. 3 days earlier, one of the quantum labs contracted to analyze the Voyager signal. SynQ Research, based in Colorado, had experienced a cascade failure. Their topological qubit processor, used to simulate extraterrestrial signal structures, had overheated catastrophically during a real-time analysis of the pulse. No software error, no power surge, just a complete thermodynamic breakdown triggered by data. The system hadn't been hacked. It hadn't crashed. It had responded. The processor began generating recursive shapes, fractals layered within fractals, until it collapsed under its own informational density. One researcher described the last few frames before the system shut down as spatial paradoxes encoded in time, a visual pattern resembling a 4D structure that looked more like a memory than a shape. Two of the lab's scientists had since refused to speak to anyone. One had reportedly destroyed his phone, left his home, and driven to an undisclosed location in Utah. The other was admitted into a psychiatric facility, citing dreams, vivid, repeating dreams, of a structure floating in total darkness, humming with light, whispering in numbers. None of this made it into public media. NASA's official stance was that the Voyager 2 anomaly was a low-priority signal anomaly under routine analysis. But those in the room knew better. They weren't just worried about what Voyager 2 had encountered. They were worried about what had encountered Voyager 2, and through it, us. The moment of decision had arrived. Do they respond? The scientists wanted to. Every instinct pulled them toward curiosity, exploration, understanding. But the military advisors were firm. You don't wave at something if you don't know if it sees you as prey, one of them said bluntly. We sent that probe out not knowing what it might find. Now something's found it. You really want to open the door wider? But the door might already be open. For 2 nights in a row, observatories in Chile and New Mexico detected faint optical anomalies in the region of space Voyager was transmitting from. Not objects, not flares, just distortions. The kind you might expect if something massive was moving without emitting heat. Something bending light subtly, gravitational lensing on a scale that shouldn't be possible without a star or a black hole. Except this distortion moved, slowly, deliberately, and then the signal changed. It happened at 3:17 UTC on a Thursday morning. The pulse, unchanged for weeks, altered its rhythm. Slightly. Instead of 7.44 seconds between pulses, it shortened to 6.93. Still steady, still perfect, but different, as if in response, as if it had heard the debate on Earth and answered with a single gesture. I'm still here. And then, something impossible happened. Every radio telescope pointed at Voyager 2 recorded a brief interruption in cosmic background radiation, just for a moment. A dip. Not from space itself, but from the signal. It had created an anti-noise, a void, a subtraction. That subtraction, when converted into audio, sounded like a voice, not a word, not a language, just the shape of voice, like the echo of someone breathing through a room you can't see. One of the analysts called it a ghost in the circuit. At this point, the NSA stepped in and issued a directive. All signal analysis was to be conducted in black site facilities. No public logs, no academic access. The Voyager data stream was rerouted. The public signal was now a decoy. But those who had already seen it, those who had tracked the changes before the shutdown, began to organize outside official channels. They called themselves the Threshold Collective, a scattered group of astronomers, coders, linguists, and former intelligence operatives, all drawn together by the belief that humanity was now standing on the edge of something it couldn't control. Some wanted to respond. Others warned against it. A few believed it was already too late. And then came the final transmission. Not from Voyager, but from Earth. Somehow, deep within the architecture of one of the oldest satellite dishes in Madrid, a signal was generated without command. It mimicked Voyager's pulse. It matched the 6.93 cadence. And it launched outward, unauthorized, unlogged into deep space. Nobody could explain it. The hardware logs showed no activation, no power draw, no software prompt. The antenna simply moved, aligned with the trajectory of Voyager 2, and spoke. The next morning, Voyager 2's signal stopped. Not corrupted, not jammed, just gone. And in its place, an echo arrived, a repeating signal, smooth, patterned, undistorted. It bore no resemblance to the original telemetry. It was newer, cleaner, like an upgrade. It used the same frequency Voyager had used, but now pulsed with a structure that Earth systems had never seen before. Like a new dialect, a handshake returned, not human. NASA labeled it Protocol Omega. They haven't told the public yet, because maybe the most terrifying part isn't that we were contacted. Maybe it's that we answered, and something out there understood.